It is not unusual to hear people talking about futile knowledge or useless knowledge, meaningless knowledge or impractical knowledge. And we should be careful. We are warned about these forms of knowledge and the waste that they constitute. But what is useless knowledge? We talked about analysis paralysis a while back. We tried to summarize that as the continuous pursuit of more information even beyond what is needed, in a way that delays action, in a way that prevents the achievement of goals and objectives. Napoleon famously talked about that. There is a very nice quote in which he says that when it is time for analysis, when it is time for planning, he will not leave any detail. He will obsess over a bit of information that he can gather. But when it's time for battle, he will throw everything away and head on with full courage. And in this, he is trying to say there is a difference between these different stages of action and of information. We talked about uncertainty and incompleteness before, and how the world has a built-in uncertainty component, and our knowledge of the world will perpetually be incomplete. Socrates says, "I know nothing." And this can lead us into thinking about another form of useless knowledge or bad knowledge. This is the limited knowledge that gives false confidence. You can link this to the Dunning-Kruger effect. Some knowledge is too small to yield good results, good outcome, but it is big enough to cause someone to have unreasonable belief and faith in their own infallibility, unreasonable confidence. This kind of knowledge is worse than no knowledge. This limited knowledge that comes with overgrown confidence. Knowledge that is closely linked to the ego, to an identity, where people mistake their identities for what they know or mistake the approximation that is their knowledge for reality. I talk about this in Fuzzy on the Dark Side. This is the negative aspect of approximate thinking and not understanding that this knowledge stands for something. It is an incomplete representation of something much richer and much bigger. And this again is useless, if not worse, knowledge. In academia, we have, and this is in academia, there is always the joke at universities about the quality of some research that some academics do. You hear about them probably in the media, this bit of research about, the speed of a hamster on a wheel or about the shrimp on a treadmill. There are equally weird things, more weird things in humanities research, in social science research. And this is always a dilemma. It has been a dilemma for me personally. But how can we create research that is more useful and that is not just intended to be read by a small group of people who will use it exclusively to produce more research? So like a Ponzi scheme. We sometimes have this joke about writing an article to be read by 20, 30 other academics who will use that article in their own research that will be read by more academics, and that's it, in an endless loop of academic incest. Nassim Nicholas Taleb says, academia is to knowledge what prostitution is to love. They are somehow similar, but not quite the same. These are all problematic aspects. Useless? I don't know. So here we ask, what is this useful thing about knowledge? And I would say, what is the purpose of knowledge? Is it action? Is it to get things done? And which things? Or is the purpose of knowledge the betterment, the improvement of the individual? And how does that happen? Or does it have another purpose altogether? I was having a discussion on this a while back, and we were talking about sci-fi with a few people online. And the discussion went into the direction of what is useful about sci-fi and fantasy writing. Other than the fact that this is not the point. Useful is not directly the point, but it is quite useful. One, it is inspiration for particular inventions. Turns out there's a big list of those. Other than that, it's an inspiration for many people where these writings charge their imagination. I was listening to a discussion a while back also about how the word intellectualize is perceived as a bad word. Think about it. If someone tells you, don't intellectualize this, you automatically feel that there is something very negative associated with this word. And here the question is, why is that? It is because of all of these, because of the negative connotations that could link one of these useless or one of these forms of knowledge that are perceived to be useless or even worse. As we said, the paralyzing knowledge, the ignorant but overconfident knowledge, the ego or identity blinded knowledge. And this form of knowledge for the sake of more knowledge, the overly academic, overly analytical one that seems to revolve around itself in endless circles. So, back to the question, what is useful? And here we start thinking about what is useful to the individual and what is useful to the group. As an individual, if you have specific goals in life, you can ask, well, how does this knowledge serve these goals? And here, useful becomes something very personal. This kind of thinking can be associated with a number of dangers: imprisoning yourself in old paradigms, or getting stuck with the previous you, or even making yourself too robotic. Like you're going after these goals and you're doing whatever is needed to go after these goals. There's some kind of limitation in that. I tried to think about this when I was developing the Atlas of Worldly Wisdom. And here we are talking about intent as the driver of knowledge. It's intent, it's the vision for the future. But also knowledge itself has to be upgraded into this form of awareness, which is kind of light and ready. And knowledge has these three dimensions: knowledge of the self, knowledge of the world, and knowledge of knowledge itself. And your approach to knowledge should be a continuous act of rebalancing, looking at all the dimensions. And even then, you have to remain open in a sense. Open in the sense that you are willing to explore fields that weren't on your radar. I try to read certain books from random disparate fields sometimes, like squids or mushrooms. These are not directly related to anything I research, but they seem interesting enough and far enough to generate some interest. As societies and groups, things become more tricky, because as societies and as groups, we don't know what useful means, because as groups we can never agree on what useful is. And this is where do something useful with knowledge becomes more tricky. Do you agree with the people who define useful as some kind of growth in the GDP? Is the economic dimension enough? Or should we look at knowledge as this vague, continuous betterment of individuals and groups? Well, this is why I said it should be looked at as a continuous act of rebalancing. Eventually, knowledge cannot be always useful, no matter how you define useful, because knowledge must be playful and fun in a way. There should be some waste in it. Any form of exploration and discovery must include waste, because to explore and to discover, you are admitting that you don't know. And when you don't know, you must try. Life is too beautiful and too short to be stuck on one thing